Yo, what's going on guys, it is Foxy19 here, welcome back to a brand new video, another episode of the F1 debate, and the last F1 debate episode that we have got for this season. I'll be doing plenty of other little F1 things, obviously, throughout the course of the off-season, and also an F1 series, which will be coming back very, very soon. You probably know what it is, but stay tuned for it. It's almost done. It's almost done. But let's get talking about the F1 debate for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the last race of the season finale, which provided us with so much entertainment and drama for all of the oh wait, no, they were done already. Okay, it was just a normal race then. Yeah, it was the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and it was not really that special, which was mainly because, well, the championships were already decided, apart from obviously the battle for second in the constructors. Yeah, there was just nothing really to go for. It was just a normal race, kind of like every other race since Red Bull wrapped everything up. But, of course, you know, you've got to get the calendar and the season done no matter what. And not every single race and championship will go down to the final race in Abu Dhabi. But what about the race, though? Was it actually any good? Was it actually really, really bad? Well, all in all, it was okay. It wasn't anything super special, but it wasn't anything super snorefest. There was lots of overtaking, which was great. It was good to see plenty of wheel-to-wheel racing going on throughout the pack. But obviously where you really want to see the action and the fighting at the front of the field like we saw in Vegas last week, we just never really saw that. We just saw fighting down the order, sort of from effectively Russell, not even Russell, Norris really, sort of, well, yeah, it was pretty much just everyone below the top five really was getting involved in wheel-to-wheel racing, which was a real shame. It was very pedestrian at the front of the field. Obviously, Max was just in his own different league as he has been all year long. Leclerc had fantastic pace, so he stayed where he was. Russell didn't really have the pace on Leclerc. The two McLarens didn't really have the pace on the other guys ahead. And then further back, you know, it was just, that's where the wheel-to-wheel racing was going on, where they have been a lot more even and a lot more competitive, you know, in the past. So that's kind of where it was, all in all. But there was plenty of wheel-to-wheel racing, plenty of overtaking. It's just one of those where they made such a the biggest hype out of the entire race was just the battle in the constructors between Mercedes and Ferrari. And while I had a little bit of that adrenaline running, hoping that Mercedes could beat Ferrari in the constructors, which we did, I still was just a bit like, it is what it is. It's kind of one of those, and I'll be perfectly honest, I'm one of those that's been very critical of this season, and oh Jesus, can't even get the words out now. Overall, I will stand by it. It's probably the worst Formula 1 season I've ever watched. It's just been such a poor year, unfortunately, but they happen. You know, we get seasons where one team is completely dominant to the other, and yeah, it's just one of those we just have to sort of sit there and suck it up, effectively. And what will happen next year? Can anyone catch Red Bull? Well, it's not necessarily going to be as difficult as a lot of people think. And I'm going to make an F1 debate video. I'd like to make one anyway, whether I get the time to get it done, to talk about the F1, what teams could potentially beat Red Bull next year. And I'll quickly highlight where I want to go on that. A lot of people are basically saying, including like Mercedes and stuff, like, we've got a long, long way to overhaul to try and, you know, beat Red Bull in the championship. You know, they're 17 seconds clear at the checkered flag, having not developed their car since August or whatever. Let's not cut to the fact that, yes, while there was a minor regulation change between 2020 and 2021, that the dominant Mercedes W11 stopped developing their car after the Belgian Grand Prix, which in that season, how many races? There was only 17 races in that season. So I find out quickly via the Googles when that was, and basically showed to you that after they'd stopped developing at that point, everyone else kept developing and developing and developing, but Mercedes didn't. They stopped, but then come 2021, we had the greatest championship battle we've ever witnessed until the final race when the FIA turned into a bunch of plebs. But checking the calendar here, the Belgian Grand Prix was round 7 of the Formula 1 season during that time period. So you had back-to-back races in Austria, Hungary, back-to-back races in Silverstone, Spain, Belgium. So they introduced an upgrade package at the Belgian Grand Prix, which was a couple of tweaks here and there to the car, the floor and everything like that, etc. So then they had the rest of the season, the 2 Italian Grand Prix, Russia, Germany, Portugal, Emilia-Romagna, Turkey, Bahrain, Sakhir, Abu Dhabi, where they stopped upgrading completely and then focused all that into 2021. So we said the same thing as what we're saying now back in 2020 of, oh my God, well, Mercedes have already stopped developing their car in 2020. Surely there's no way anyone can catch them in 2021. Of course they did. Well, Red Bull obviously did and caught them. They didn't win the constructors and they didn't deserve to win the drivers on the day, but they still won a championship. So it's possible, and it's again completely possible this way because everybody would have now had another year of learning this new regulations, and you always get that really. Let's look at this regulation era that I'm talking about now in 2020. We got 2019, which was the first year of this new regulatory era, and we had a 50-50 championship battle, didn't we not? We had Mercedes dominate the first half of the season, and then come the second half of the season, Ferrari and Red Bull sort of got in the act a little bit, getting a couple of wins, especially Ferrari with their power unit, and all of a sudden then going into 2020, we're thinking, well, Mercedes are obviously going to be up there. You'd expect that. I'm going to shift the camera up a little bit here. Mercedes are going to be up there. I've now shifted it way too high. I should have just left it alone as where it was to start with. But Mercedes, we were obviously going to know they were going to be up there in the first place. We then thought, well, Ferrari were going to be there, but obviously, they had their power unit agreement put into place, and then Red Bull obviously picking up a couple of wins in the final races of the season, such as they didn't win in Mexico, such as Brazil, for an example, and they were competitive there, and they were obviously quick in Abu Dhabi as well. And then all of a sudden come 2020, that's when you're thinking these three teams are going to go at it for the championship, and then Mercedes all of a sudden just dominate the whole year, and you're thinking, oh my God, no one's ever going to beat them. Guess what's happened in this regulatory era? Well, Red Bull and Ferrari had a 50-50 championship fight for 2022. Then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, Ferrari just need a little bit and they can get back onto Red Bull's heels. Mercedes won the Brazilian Grand Prix, so their zero-pod concept is definitely working now. So now in 23, we're thinking Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari will go at it. Oh my God, Red Bull won literally every single race of the season apart from one in Singapore when they didn't. Oh, no one's ever going to beat them ever again. It's not impossible to beat Red Bull. It's just up to the teams to get their act together. I'm going to make a separate F1 debate video, pretty much further elaborating what I've just said here and why I think who's basically in contention to beat them and how it can be done. Because I genuinely think it will. I think 2024, no matter what, will be a much better season than what we've witnessed this year around, in before Red Bull just win 100% of the races instead of 99.9% of them. But hey, we live in hope and we dream, don't we? But let's go and have a look at have a chat about the teams and their overall performances. But before we get into that, actually, I'll quickly round off the whole weekend is in general. It was quite a messy session, really, in terms of practice. Obviously, we saw the rookies going out in FP1 because they have to do a mandatory 2 practice sessions a year. Red Bull being the smartest out of all that and just putting both of their drivers in for the last race at the same time. So they only technically had to do it once throughout the course of the season, whereas pretty much every other team did it twice in the season. So pretty smart for them. Obviously, FP2 was just curtailed by crashes, which left them with like 10 minutes of actual running time, which really just screwed them over. But hey, I'll take lack of running for them. FP3 was kind of a bit of a false dawn on FP3 because Red Bull struggled massively throughout the course of the weekend, but shock of the horrors, you make a couple of setup changes, the car's back on track again. And that's the thing with what Red Bull have been able to do, I think, this season more than anything else, is that they've been able to make setup changes and get their car into a much better working window because it's a wider working window. With the likes of Ferrari and Mercedes in particular, it's such a narrow window where the car will work that it's so difficult to tune it to get it into that place. And then when you get it into that place and you want to try and eke out a little bit more, then you just destabilize the whole thing. And then eventually you're not going forward, you're taking steps backwards, and then it just gets really, really messy for them. So that makes, complete sense on that front for them. And of course, qualifying then, you're thinking potentially McLaren could be on pole, and Lando Norris bottled it. Verstappen gets on pole. And even in the race, I thought Max didn't quite have the pace because the gap in the first stint never really got above 2 seconds between Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. But then in the end, obviously, Verstappen romped away to victory after pitting for the hard tyres and just breezed it at that point. Just had so much more pace. Definitely a lot of teams were managing heavy on those medium compound tyres. As soon as they swapped to the hards, then the true pace for everyone came out because there was a lot less degradation on the hard tyres compared to obviously those medium tyres. And then it just came to that point of the checker flag. Like I said, The McLaren-Aston Martin battle never really took shape. McLaren were just way quicker and had that comfortable. Ferrari versus Mercedes was a very intense fight all the way to the checkered flag. The championship order was constantly changing because obviously Leclerc was able to get in front of Russell, stay in front of Russell for the whole race. So it meant Ferrari were always going to be outscoring on that front. You had Sainz that had an absolute shocker. Hamilton had a shocker. So it was a really difficult race for them. But eventually, obviously with Lewis and George both at least scoring points versus Leclerc only getting the point, obviously it gave them that in the championship. But looking then team by team, Red Bull, again, another standard dominant weekend for them. Verstappen doing what he's done all year round. Red Bull have had such a great year, and it's a massive credit to them for doing it. And congratulations to them. I'm just hoping you don't do it again, ever, because it bored the hell out of me. But hey, you can't hate the players, hate the game. Or something like that, I don't know. But yeah, credit to Red Bull. They did an amazing job. And hopefully now, come next year, we'll see the other teams catch right up to them. Because yes, while Red Bull haven't upgraded since August, properly since that new sidepod iteration at the Hungarian Grand Prix and a couple of tweaks in Belgium, just because you've done that and you're just focusing on next year's car, it doesn't necessarily mean that what you're doing is necessarily as good as what others are doing. These teams are testing out different little pieces and building a platform for next year. Red Bull already have that platform. It's always harder for a team to go even better than what you've already done, because the other teams will learn from what they've done and then find different ways about what they've done to go even quicker. And then that's obviously how the cycle of championships can change, depending on the team that you're in and if you can actually run it properly and not be a pleb, Ferrari. But yeah, credit to Red Bull. Great season for them. Outstanding work from the team all year round. Verstappen, absolutely dominant. Perez had a great race and a great recovery drive. We'll get onto the incidents panel later on. I do believe it was a 5-second penalty for Sergio Perez. A lot of people say it was a racing incident, including the commentary team at the time. I think it was a valid 5-second penalty. But it does counteract completely what happened in Vegas, which just annoys me. We'll get on to that in just a second. But yeah, great season for them. Mercedes, I have genuinely no idea how Mercedes have finished second in the Constructors. Genuinely, I've got no idea. I mean, Ferrari were always going to be the biggest challengers because Ferrari were the team that were able to stay more consistent throughout the course of the year. But Mercedes, that car was so bad. Now, I know people have changed concepts. I know, Ferrari had kind of two concepts in one, really. But Ferrari had a platform which they already had a quicker car than Mercedes anyway, and just evolved the quicker car. With Mercedes, they still had, their car was by far, aesthetically, when you're talking the model of the Mercedes, when they put the side pods on, it just looked like the messiest Formula 1 car ever built. The front wing, alright, the front of the car was okay. Even the suspension was still a little bit weird, but what you could just see, the way that the side pod was on, and the massive groove and the dink up before the little, airflow channels on the top of the head, you could just see it was just such a messy car of just, here's my microphone, for example, right? Here's one leg that's been built from one manufacturer, we'll chuck that on. Here's one leg from that, we'll chuck that on. I don't know what this thing, we'll get a different cable, we'll get this, but it's actually a cube instead of a sphere or so. It was just bits of Lego put together. And it was just such a horrible car. And the fact that they managed to get second in the Constructors with that car is massive credit to them. But it's a huge task now, because they're obviously going to change concepts now for 2024. Russell's already trying to big it up a bit, saying, I've seen it in the wind tunnel and it looks promising. Let's see what you can do, though. But a massive congratulations on them for taking second in the Constructors. They'll take the extra prize money all day long and the motivation going into the winter, because it's always that debate. Would you rather finish second in the championship or finish third, get the extra prize money for being second in the championship, or finish third and just get the wind tunnel time anyway? And they were all right. Martin was right in it. Look, you want to finish as high as you can. Finishing second in the championship, getting the, your pit garage closer towards where the top team is. They'll have that at their disposal. They'll have the extra money in there. It'll impress the sponsors, because the sponsors are more important. And yeah, you'll have a little bit less wind tunnel time, but you work with what you've got. You maximize what you've got. And it resets every 6 months anyway. So it doesn't really matter, to be honest, for them. So, but credit to them. Discredit, though, for Ferrari, unfortunately for them. They probably, I felt like, should have taken second in the Constructors. I don't actually think Mercedes deserved it. I think Mercedes massively overachieved compared to the other teams in and around them. Obviously, McLaren were in a different stride, and we'll go on to them shortly. But with Ferrari, I felt like while they didn't have the overall downforce package compared to other cars out there like the Red Bulls and the McLarens, like Suzuka was a prime example of that, you know, the high-speed corners. Ferrari had fantastic aero efficiency. They were rapid in a straight line. They were brilliant out of slow-speed corners and traction zones. There's actually a lot of strengths of the Ferrari. They're just missing peak downforce on that car and a better chassis, really, to just go through those high-speed corners with ease and then, you know, just catching up with it. Whereas, you know, Mercedes only really had slow speed corners to their advantage. Like, Mercedes was the queen of drag. You know, it was a drag queen. It had no straight line speed. I just felt like Ferrari had more. But even in this race, like, what were they doing with Sainz's strategy? Like, I'm still puzzled by it. Like, the fact is that Sainz was, all right, sure, he started down the order in 16th, but Hamilton started down the order in 11th and only managed to finish 9th. Yet Sainz couldn't even get into the points. And then they extended his stint long anyway, and you're thinking, all right, maybe they could be doing a one-stop, go on to mediums or something like that. Then they go on to another set of hards, and you're thinking, right, so you've done hard, and now you're just waiting for a safety car. It's like, why? If you just did a competitive two-stop race and gave Sainz, you know, I probably would have said go on to hards to start with, and then go on to mediums, go on to 2 sets of hards, and then a set of mediums, but give him an opportunity to attack the field, and he probably would have been seconds quicker than the rest of the field and probably would have got points from it. But what they were doing, I've no idea. They threw it away. So too did Leclerc, though, I actually felt, because while he was being cheeky and letting Sergio Perez through on the last lap of the race, why he didn't just slow down to the point where Russell caught Leclerc after the 2 DRS zones and then just basically slowed Russell right down, blocked all the lines and weaved around to just then allow Perez to build 5 seconds. He didn't allow Perez to build it. He just let Perez through, and it would have made no difference either. I know what Leclerc was trying to do in terms of let Perez through and then go up behind him. But by letting Perez through in that situation, you're automatically just meaning that you've got to back off even. I don't know. It was a weird strategy. He could have done more. If it was me in that Formula 1 car and fighting for second in the constructors, I would have done what he did, let Perez through in the second, you know, in that circumstance there of, you know, on that last lap. And then as soon as I'd exit the 2 DRS zones, I'd slow up to allow George Russell to catch me and then just bolt it. Or I would have done it the lap before, so lap 50, so they would have started lap 57, so they would have had all of 57 and 58 and then just slowed up, because George isn't quick enough in a straight line in the Mercedes anyway. And then I would have just done it down that route and just blocked off George and just let Perez build 5 seconds. I would have, but anyway, you know, I'm a horrible human being, so it is what it is. Grip to them. But yeah, they threw it away. I think Ferrari deserved second in the constructors, but Mercedes overachieved and got more out of it, and to be honest, have the better driver lineup to do it in that circumstance. McLaren finishing 4th and 5th on the road and 4th in the constructors. Fantastic recovery from them this season. They started all the way down in the dumps, but really got their project going, and they're in a very good position to try and take the fight to Red Bull next year if they could just get some things right on that car. For me, I think McLaren were just missing overall. I think they're just missing a little bit more downforce and aero efficiency, and they definitely need to improve the drag on the car, because the car is just too draggy in high speed. And if they can do that, then they'll definitely be in with the mix. But great recovery drive from the team, all the way from the start of the year to the end. They've been phenomenal, and massive kudos to them. They didn't really have the pace in the race. I thought in quali they could have got pole, especially with Norris, but he threw away yet another Saturday. But in the race, I was expecting them to be a bit more competitive, but they weren't. They were just lacking pace to Mercedes and Ferrari. Of course, they made a mess in the pit stop with Norris, which is a weird one, because McLaren are actually become the kings of pit stops. But you know, Russell and Leclerc had more pace in them, and simple as that. And that's where they finished. But hey, you can't fault their performances. Next up is Aston Martin. Again, they have been a weird team. I mean, you've got to give them credit anyway, from bolting up from, 9th or 8th in the championship last year to finishing 5th. Comfortable 5th as well. But it's a bit more concerning when you start the year so well and then you just dip off because the other teams have developed. And I think the problem is that Aston Martin have got one main concept, and it's got a lot of things similar to what Red Bull have got. But then when you've got teams like Mercedes and Ferrari, which have got completely the wrong concept and are basically putting 2 little pieces together, fake Lego pieces, you just feel like they could have done a bit more. But hey, they'll take that as a standing point. But now the issue that they've got is they need to progress further, and they don't want to keep themselves stagnated. And then they're going to have to do that now against the McLaren team that's on the rise and is only going to it's been getting quicker and quicker and quicker, which is difficult. You've got Ferrari, who are going to be building a new concept for next year, but you've got to see if that works. Mercedes, who are going to be building a new concept again for next year. And then Red Bull, who are the team to beat. So it's a lot for them to do, and it's whether they can do it or not. I think they can get closer, but it's going to rely heavily on Lance Stroll. Because if you give Alonso a quick car, he'll do the business for you. Just look at the start of the year. He was the only man that was going to be able to keep Max Verstappen in any form of vision for the first part of the season. But it's up to Lance Stroll, because when Aston Martin had the quicker car, or, compared to the other teams around them, Stroll couldn't deliver. Alonso could. And then when it got tougher, Alonso was still trying to push harder. And then Stroll was sort of getting a little bit better when the Aston Martin was worse, which doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. Alpine, I can't take Alpine seriously anymore, man. I really can't. They're not a team that I can't take seriously when you've got multiple sporting celebrities that co-own the team, and the way that they were again in turmoil, with Gasly being pitted, Ocon pitting in front of Gasly to undercut him, and then Gasly undercutting Ocon. They just don't have a structure. They don't have a good team. They don't have anything going for them. And for me, they finished 6th in the championship, but all the start of the year is, we're going to have development that's going to catch Ferrari and Mercedes. No, you're not. You're not going to catch them. I can't see them progressing. There's just nothing that says to me that team means business. Aston meant business by taking Alonso. Alpine don't mean any business when you've lost Alonso, you lose Piastri. You've got two drivers which I don't think are good enough to propel you further up in terms of performance. And then you've got a car which, it's just mid. It's mid. That's all I really can say about them. And, they finished mid-table, and they're just a mid-team. That's pretty much it from Alpine. It was another kind of sluggish race from them again, so it is what it is. Who finished 7th? Williams finished 7th in the championship. Wow. Massive credit to them for doing that. Brilliant performance. Really overachieved thanks to Alex Albon. Sargeant didn't really do anything at all. I got 1 point, actually. I'll give him that. He did get the point, so big up to the point for Logie. Great season for them. They just need to keep working on their car. They're great car. They've got a great car in straight line speed. They've just got to work on the downforce and efficiency moving forwards, and hopefully we can see Williams move back closer towards the front of the field. But it's a good boost for them that they finally just don't finish last in the championship for once in their lives, because they just keep finishing down the bottom. But it was a great recovery for them, or great progress, should I say. Not really recovery. But yeah, they've got a good car underneath them. They've got good potential. They've got the straight line speed asset, which just shows that in terms of the Mercedes power unit, it's not a case of Mercedes power unit being so weak like Mercedes and McLaren, or Aston Martin even to an effect, just being slow. It just shows that the concept of the cars that those three teams have got are just very, very draggy. And from these other teams now, Mercedes have been saying they've had to turn down their power unit significantly more, because obviously their zero pod concept compresses everything in. But if they do now, which they're obviously going to do, build a new concept of car, and it opens up that box a bit, they can obviously get a bit more air flow through that area, be less compact. So maybe we'll see a less draggy Mercedes next year, but it just shows that power unit is fine, because the Williams is just quick in a straight line naturally, so it just needs the efficiency in there. They just need to work on the downforce of that car and bring more to it, and they'll be absolutely fine. But credit to them for finishing 7th in the championship. Great driving from Albon. It's key that they can keep Albon. No confirmation if Sargeant, by the time I'm making this video, is keeping his seat. Do I think he deserves it? Not really. I don't think he does. He hasn't done enough for me to prove it. But Williams are the type of team that will probably take their time with it. Obviously, they haven't confirmed it themselves. But also, he is an academy driver. So I don't think they want to go down the route of Red Bull, where they have one academy driver and then just kick him out after a year and he just loses his entire career. I think they'll keep Sargeant for 1 more year and give him another chance and say, you've had your rookie year, all these tracks that you've never driven at before, you've driven at them now, you've got experience around all these circuits. Now this year is key. If you keep underperforming, then you're gone. And I think that's the sensible way for them to go around it. AlphaTauri, they're on the up heading into next season. They brought a new floor to Abu Dhabi and it definitely gave them some performance. And with them now shifting next year to be a lot more closely aligned with Red Bull in terms of what they can take from the car, and I think they're basically going to take everything that they're allowed to take, they'll definitely be back up there as a proper midfield team. They'll obviously never be at the front of the field. That's just never going to happen for them, because even though they can take elements from Red Bull, they can't take everything, and you need everything together to make it work. Yeah, you can take all of the rear ends of the Red Bull, but if you then design the front end of the car and it doesn't match properly with the rear of the car, everything needs to work. But they definitely found some improvements. Unlucky that they didn't beat Williams in the championship, but I think they'll do a better job next season, and it'll be key to see how Ricciardo can do in a full year in Formula 1. Alfa Romeo, the last time we will ever be saying the words Alfa Romeo, because from next year onwards, it'll just be back to Sauber until Audi complete the full takeover. Unless Audi are going to just give themselves the title name now, which I don't think they will. But yeah, it is no longer Alfa Romeo. So thank you very much, Alfa, for having the name anyway, at least, on your cars. Bottas and Zhou, 9th in the championship. It's not been a great year for them. They started the season quite well, I'm pretty sure they did. And then they just dropped off and just didn't have the pace or the performance. So yeah, overall it's a difficult year for them. They won't be satisfied with that. And neither will Haas be. Haas, I didn't even realise, last in the championship. What a horrific year Haas have had. And it just shows that that team has got no chances at the moment, even going into next year now, of progressing forwards. I mean, they've got great quali pace, but again, they just kill the tyres and they just don't understand why. And when you build a B-spec car and it's not even good enough, you're in a whole world of pain. And yeah, when Hulkenberg swaps to the old package and he says the old package is quicker than the new one, it's a worrying sign for Haas. We'll have to see what they come up with next year, but unfortunately, Haas are back to the days in like 2021 when they were just the worst team on the grid by a country mile. Obviously not by a country mile this time around. They were obviously still closely compact with Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Williams, and so forth. But yeah, it's been a bad year for Haas, and they'll want to forget that one quickly. If they can get on top of the tyre wear problems, they do have a quick package. They just can't, and it's really hurt them. So shame for them. But that is all the teams rounded off for this F1 debate. So what I'm going to go do now is show you guys the incidents of what happened in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which is basically probably just the Perez incident, to be honest. And then we wrap off this F1 debate. And finally, we would have done an F1 debate episode for every single Grand Prix, which I'm actually really, really proud of myself for doing. But hey ho. So let's go have a look at them. So taking a look at the incidents then, first things first, we're going to be looking at Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso and the alleged brake test, which led to no further action. Now, this was something that I don't agree with. I don't really like drivers that just lift off the throttle, especially in the high-speed zone, to then try and nab the DRS and cause that heavy braking effect. I don't think it's very clever. I think it is erratic, and I do think it's dangerous. The fact that it got away with no further action doesn't suit right with me, because it's not necessarily a case of we need to penalise Fernando Alonso for this. It's more a case of stopping other drivers from using this as an example of what is clean racing, effectively. So the issue that we've got is, as we head down towards the hairpin now, you can see, as I've gone a bit too fast there, Alonso has lifted off the throttle. Now, where I think Alonso's got away with this is in two sections here. Number one, I think that he's just lifted. He's probably put a tiny bit of brake pedal in there, but more so just lifting and coasting, which would have helped him out in that circumstance. And this shot here would have also helped him out, because yes, it was an effective brake test here, and yes, you're going to have a part of your car offline to go onto the curb to take the braking point to go round into the apex. But Alonso has effectively moved his car so it is completely off the circuit to try and force Lewis Hamilton into it. So I think what Alonso has done has been basically borderline, but being clever and smart about how he does what he wants to do. And obviously he's done it right here to give him the best opportunity. And then that's when he's gone onto the racing line then. But the issue that I've got, it doesn't seem right that from this point here, this is a roundabout. It's a very blurry shot, I understand. This is the point when Alonso is effectively lifting off the throttle. And that little board there, that's the 150 meter brake marker board. So he's doing this a long way back, mind. And it doesn't suit well with me. I think it's a 5-second penalty for Alonso, but more than anything else, it's the fact that this is encouraged, that you can do this, and don't quite agree with it. But it is, if anyone was going to do this type of tactic, it's Fernando Alonso, because he is a bastard, okay? And obviously that led to, the whole sequence afterwards. Now, We've got the other incident to look at, which is Sergio Perez versus Lando Norris in the battle for 4th on the road at the time. So let's have a look what occurred here. So they're going into the hairpin, and it's Perez versus Norris. There's a whack, and then they go on through. Now, the biggest screenshot that you can pose from this is right here at contact point. They're going into the chicane, but there's a little bit of an anomaly going into the chicane, and it is... Do you want any more room on your apex, Perez? Do you want any more than what you've just granted yourself here? It's a 100% of 5-second penalty, but this does annoy me because guess how this contact came about in the previous race in Vegas, but it just went that a front wing end plate and a wheel rim cover was damaged in the process. Russell and also Verstappen. And in that instance, because the front wing end plate had been damaged on Verstappen and the front left wheel rim cover had been broken off of Russell's, Russell was further ahead of Verstappen going into this corner in comparison. And again, it's Perez on the inside that's been given the 5-second penalty. It was Verstappen on the inside in Brazil 2022 that was given a 5-second penalty. It was Russell on the inside in France, which they just didn't do anything about it because the overtake by Russell wasn't complete. It's inconsistency from the FIA, and this is the problem that we've got. This is why I hate the FIA so much, is they just have zero consistency about what they're doing. And here is the exact same format. We've got the inside line driver that is clearly at fault here, that's being penalised for multiple of these incidences, apart from the one. Oh, it was Verstappen, sorry, I'm joking. Don't shout. But yeah, I mean, it's a 5-second penalty for me. A lot of people will say race an incident. I just think you're either, at this point, if you're Norris, you're either just letting Perez control the corner, and you can't when he's out braking you in that point. And I'm pretty sure I caught more of the clips afterwards going on here again. So this is in like slow-mo. You know, Norris is going into the corner and Perez has whacked him here. You know, Perez has got so much apex room to work with. And yeah, he's going in wide, but all Perez needs to do here is, if he wants to, is just pinch Norris and set him up for the second straight if he wants to. He's got the straight line speed in the Red Bull to breeze past him in the second DRS zone. He just goes a little bit too eager with it. And obviously Norris there takes the bump and just goes straight on. And I think it's completely fair. And again, just going in slow, you can see that Perez really, you know, Norris has to turn at some point. And in fairness to them, there is a hefty whack on their front wing end plate. And the front wing end plate there of Sergio Perez has taken a bit of a knock there. So surprising that they have done that. But there's a point when Norris actually physically needs to turn. You know, otherwise, there's two options that goes on here. Norris does what he tries to do and at least turn in. Because what Norris is trying to do is he's trying to force Perez to rethink his strategy of attack. Because if he just lets Perez control the corner, Perez will just run him super wide, and he'll either have to go off the track and gain an advantage by doing so, or be pinched super tight into the apex in the chicane that his DRS effect in the second straight is completely nullified. What Norris is trying to do here is say, actually, mate, no, I'm going to turn. You've got enough space on that inside line that I've given you, so I'm going to pinch your line. Perez understeered into Norris, and I think it's a clear 5-second penalty for Sergio Perez and all that. I don't know if I caught Perez going through on slow-mo, no. So I think it is a 5-second penalty for all of them. But that is it for the incidents right here, and also for the F1 debate in general. Guys, thank you so much for watching the F1 debate throughout the course of this season. I really, really appreciate all the support that you've given to me. And great viewership as well, each and every race, and you guys keep getting involved in the comment section down below, which is absolutely awesome. Like I said, I'll be bringing out a couple of F1 debates, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, to go through a couple of things that hopefully I would like to see going into 2024, and I'll also bring out a video very soon ranking each and every single one of the races throughout the course of the season, which 99.9% of them will be rubbish, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. But hopefully these F1 debates will be a lot longer in 2024 because there'll just be so much more to talk about. But thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Take care all. Peace.